week for me. I hope it's busy for you too, because I love working. I love busy weeks. But we are here today to talk about best practices for hiring in a shifting market. But first, let's give the folks a little bit of time for them to join the panel. And I have a quick icebreaker for my panelists. And I will also ask the audience to go in the chat and tell us where you're calling from. Let's go to the icebreaker. And I want to ask my panelists, are hot dogs sandwiches or no? And I'm going to start with Kendra.
Oh, of course you're starting with me. It has a meat, it has a bread or a carbohydrate connecting all of it together. I'm going to go with it's a sandwich.
It is a sandwich. Yeah, most people say it's not a sandwich. I am with you. I think it's a sandwich, but most people say it's not. Let me ask Kate. Kate, are hot dog sandwiches?
First of all, I love hot dogs.
Me too.
I haven't really thought about this topic before until the last 2 seconds. I would say they are not sandwiches though, because usually sandwiches, the bread has a break, it's two separate pieces. And I would say, if it's, there's specialty types of sandwiches that you don't call sandwiches, you would call them something special. And I think a hot dog deserves to be in its own category.
I see. One time I asked a panelist and he said, if the marketing is good, everything can be a sandwich. So
Wow.
Maybe. Right? Eric, are hot dog sandwiches?
No, decidedly
No?
not.
Okay.
I believe strongly in this. I think just because something has the properties of a sandwich does not make it a sandwich. Lots of things have legs, lots of things have eyes. Not everything is a human. Sometimes Y is a vowel, sometimes it's not a vowel. Life is complicated. Hot dogs are definitely not sandwiches.
All right, so you're very certain that hot dogs are not sandwiches.
Very certain.
What about you, Eleanor? Are hot dog sandwiches? Uh-oh,
Nope.
we can hear
Oh, you're
you.
muted. Now we'll never know.
She said it's definitely a sandwich. That's what she said.
She said it's definitely a sandwich. So let's move on. Once I pass it up to Kendra to start the panel, I'm going backstage with Eleanor to figure out what's going on with her mic. But let's get the panel moving. I'm very excited to be talking about hiring in a shifting market with this awesome panelists. We're excited about the content and the takeaways that you, audience, will take from this. But before we jump in, today's event is brought to you by the team at Modern Sales Pros. And for those of you not familiar with Modern Sales Pros, we are the world's largest and highest quality community for those in sales management, sales leadership, sales and revenue operations, and sales enablement, aka our Modern Sales Pros. And our mission is to create an environment for our members to answer questions they would struggle to solve on their own and help them see around corners they might not know about. And we do that through live sessions like this one you're about to experience. We have an online forum and we have quarterly summits. And we are starting to get back to in-person events, which is very, very, very exciting. If you're not already a part of MSP, you'll be invited to join right after this event. And as I said, we have quarterly summits, and we are getting ready to launch our RevX Fest, Revenue Excellence Festival, happening October 11th through the 13th. We pulled together more than 24 events of amazing content and speakers. You will be able to hear from the CEO of Zoom Info, Gensai, Cowboy Ventures, and Winning by Design, as well as sales leaders at Lattice, Pendo, Outreach, Atrium, and much, much more. So I'm going to go ahead and put a link in the chat for you to get your free pass right now. Oops, I put the wrong link in there. Let me send you this link here, and you can get your free pass right now. Let me move to some housekeeping notes just to make sure we all are on the same page. First of all, this event is being recorded, so all the content and knowledge from our speakers will be saved on the MSP previous events page, and you also will receive a follow-up email with the link for the recording. So if you're here, you're going to receive the link. You're going to be able to get this content handy whenever you need it. And second of all, I was talking with our speakers backstage, and they said they love questions, and they were like, I'm feeling so tired this week. receiving a lot of questions in the chat will be amazing. Will fire me up to keep on moving this week. So let's send them bunches of questions in the chat or using the Q&A function on GoCast. But that's enough about MSP and housekeeping. Let's get started with this conversation. I have an amazing panel of panel here. They're gonna share all the knowledge with us about hiring. And I have Kendra. She will be our moderator, and she is also representing our amazing sponsor, Candidate Labs. So Kendra, I will pass to you to introduce yourself, say a few words about Candidate Labs, and then introduce our panel. And I will see you at the end. I'm going backstage just to help Eleanor to figure out the mic, and she'll be right back. Oh, is she back? Hi, Eleanor.
Hello.
Hi, there she is. Eleanor, are hot dog sandwiches? Don't think like you escaped my question.
Oh, I was saying I was going to the Giants game tonight, and so in honor of the justice for hot dogs we're all seeking, I will get a non-sandwich hot dog. I agree, they are not sandwiches.
All right, so I think we have a tie in here. All right, I'm happy you are back and your mic is working. So Kendra, I'll pass to you. You can say a few words about Candidate Labs, introduce the panel, and start this amazing conversation for our audience. I'll see you later.
Thank you, Eduardo. And welcome, everyone. We're incredibly excited for a very strong, insightful panel that's going to delve into some pretty important topics, I think, that are top of mind for every hiring manager today. First, to back up a little bit, I just want to share a little bit about Candidate Labs, shameless plug. For those of you that don't know, Candidate Labs is a modern search firm built very much like the technology companies that we serve. So we excel where some of the legacy search firms maybe fall down a little bit by truly pulling in data, technology, and human ingenuity in order to really find, secure, and place hires that are a better bi-directional fit faster. We are all about time to hire without compromising quality. What's a little unique about Candidate Labs as well is that we're founded by repeat entrepreneurs and backed by some of the top VC firms out there, talent leaders and founders. So we were voted the number one search firm on G2 and fight relentlessly to keep that slot, as our clients and candidates know, and have placed since our inception 2.5 years ago, hundreds and hundreds of impactful hires at top tier venture capital backed technology companies, really hovering in the seed A and B all the way through Series C and D. So that's a little bit about us. Welcome again. And so I think just to back up a little bit, I think the topic at hand is a really critical one. And that's really, what are some tried and true best practices for hiring in this shifting market? I'm Kendra Morales. I will be your moderator / MC. And I'll start with an intro about me. So I have the pleasure of being the VP of Client Services here at Candidate Labs. I've been here for almost 2 years. Everybody that's been early stage knows that's, 10 years. I lead the Client Services team, which is about 30 people total, including our top of funnel talent, our client services, which are recruiters. And then I oversee a lot of the execution, ensuring that things are running smoothly and that the original search as it was laid out is focused all the way through execution. I have personally executed over 400 searches. Yes, I went back and did the math. And my sandbox has historically been seed through Series D funded companies. In the 24 years I've been in search, it's still hard to say out loud. So enough about me. Let's get to the panelists and why everybody's here. I want to start with first our esteemed Kate Taylor, who is currently the head of global recruiting at Notion, a Series C's unicorn, which has raised collectively around $343 million in funding from Sequoia, Coatue, and a number of others, reaching somewhere around a $10 billion valuation with their last raise in October 2021. For the last 10 years, Kate has found that balance of working between sales and product and really adding incremental value all along the way, with starting with the self-serve business through scaled engagement in a number of high growth organizations, including Dropbox, Salesforce, and now Notion, where she spent the last 2 years owning customer experience and SMB revenue. And in the last few months pivoted to run their global recruiting team, really to use that operational experience that she's had to continue to scale Notion to over 1,000 employees, which is one of the biggest challenges for any sort of scale-up organization. Next, we have Eric Sammer, the CEO and founder of Decodable, a Series A funded company that focuses in really as being one of the first real-time data engineering services organizations. And that round was led by Bain and Venrock. Prior to Decodable, Eric founded a company called Rokana in 2014, which provided intelligent analysis around event-oriented machine data. Rokana was acquired in 2017 by Splunk. Eric brings over 20 years of experience in really hiring key talent around data infrastructure, systems programming, and just large-scale operations. Eric is also the author of Hadoop Operations, published by O'Reilly Media. Nice job, Eric. And Eric actually recently worked with Candidate Labs to bring on board his first key marketing hire. And then rounding out our panel, we have Eleanor Dorfman, a tech veteran, actually, who's currently a sales leader at ReTool, a Series C Sequoia-backed provider of really a tool development platform and intended to help build or custom build business tools without needing any programming languages prior. Eleanor has a killer track record really across all functions in the go-to-market arena. She was the founding CSM at Clever, where she spent 4.5 very successful years building out their CS organizations and solutions engineering organization until she was swooped away by Segment, where she headed up their customer experience and operations group. She's always had a passion for building new go-to-market functions at early stage companies that really are able to solve technical complex problems. So welcome to all the panelists. And again, thank you for taking time out of your busy days to join us for the discussion. And I think Eduardo also shared this, but before we jump in, please just throw in the chat your title, any sort of role that you might most need the help with. And if you're comfortable, go ahead and copy and paste your LinkedIn profile into the chat, and we can go from there. So jumping right in, if we want to go to slide 7, Eduardo. So why are we all here? And I don't want to get too existential here. I need to keep it a little reined in for time constraints. But really, what's become very clear out there in the world is that how things were done over the past couple of years with pandemic and then post-pandemic with the wild VC funding that was happening, valuations going through the roof, it's become clear that that market has changed very, very drastically. And what might have happened before isn't necessarily going to work now that that pendulum has completely swung from, why can't we hire fast enough? And what are their comp expectations? To, okay, we need to hire. We're hearing about all these layoffs happening right now. My LinkedIn, inbox should be full, but I'm not necessarily getting what I need, nor am I securing. I'm having a lot of interviews still, but not necessarily reducing that important time to hire or getting to the conclusions that I need to. So that's really what we're going to focus on today, is talking about the importance of running an effective hiring process, how to get internal alignment on hiring, why that matters, and then how to determine the right candidates at the right stage for your organization. And everybody on this panel has scaled organizations at different stages. It's a vastly different candidate that's going to work in an early stage versus a later stage. So we really want to hone in on not what gets a candidate to interview, but more so what gets that candidate to say yes, and how we as employers and hiring managers can solve for these things earlier on instead of getting our hearts broken at the altar. So let's just go ahead and start out then with our hiring process. And I want to actually tap into you for this, Kate. What do you think are the critical core elements of what makes an effective hiring process, and why does that matter?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I would say just a quick note, kind of high level on hiring, especially in this market. It's just staying really true. No matter what the market is, there are like some core fundamental things that should always be consistent for your company when hiring. And Notion has tried to stay very constant through that. So like when we have seen more of this downturn and market shift, we actually have found that not much has shifted internally because we've stayed true to the foundation that we built early days. And the big one is like, before you start the search, like, you need to make sure you have strong alignment with all of your stakeholders and hiring manager. So before you even go into the search, before you even get things kicked off, like, do you actually know what this person is going to be doing? And are the stakeholders and the folks on the panel, as well as the hiring manager, aligned to that? I find many times in calibrations, as you're like trying to figure out, what is this person doing? If you don't get that right, you end up spending a lot of time either with the wrong candidate, or you get to the very end and lose candidates, right? Because you don't have everyone on the same page. I've even found sometimes in this alignment process, you may even decide that you don't even need this role. Sometimes it's a good gut check on what is this person doing. And I think what we saw in the pandemic with valuations and just, a lot of like funding that was flooding the market, is just people were out hiring rapidly and sort of forgetting what people were actually going to be doing. And so that's just a quick reminder, but I think what's really important in the process. And then when you're in the search, I would call back to two things. One would be just honesty and transparency. So with candidates, we're always very clear that this is like a two-way fit. Like, we're evaluating you as much as you're evaluating us. We always focus on aligning candidates to our company values. And I think that two-way conversation is just a really important part of the process, that you get the right person. If someone's really excited about your company, but may not necessarily be like aligned to what the company is all about, then that's probably not going to be an effective hire for you in the long run. And then the third one I would just say is like a well-designed process. So one thing like we really hearken on is like, it's not about speed. Like, we want to accurately assess people. So like in our hiring process, have we actually assessed, is this the right candidate for us, for this role and for the company? So at the end of the process, even if it's really fast, if you don't know that, then like that, it's not a good process. If you have an extremely long process, but at the end of it, you still don't know the outcome of that fit, then it's probably not a good process. You need to kind of start over. So instead of looking at like time to hire, it is a good indicator, but it's not something we massively over focus on, because we don't want to incentivize people to just start hiring as quickly as possible. We want to incentivize people to hire for the right person. But those would be the three things I would call to, is like what I think makes our process here at Notion effective.
Interesting. Okay. That's great feedback. I'm curious, Eric, to get your thoughts on this, as Notion is a much larger company, a little bit more evolved in their processes and just evolution overall, whereas your organization is much smaller. So I ask you the same question. What are some of the critical core elements of what makes an effective hiring process for a company at your stage?
I mean, I think in a lot of ways, what Kate is describing is absolutely right. I think that the thing that shifts and changes is the specificity of the role and sort of like what you know about that. So especially for somebody like us, so, we recently completed a search for VP of marketing, and there are lots of ways you can see a VP of marketing, being effective at a stage like ours, in terms of, where is their expertise? Is it in things like demand gen? Is it in things like brand? Is it in sort of like all these different characteristics, especially with a role that senior? And so I think in a lot of ways, I'll be honest with you, at an earlier stage organization, when you're building teams from scratch, and not teams, but like whole companies, it is in many ways easier to shape a team around certain people than to shape people into a specific team that might not exist yet. Because in a lot of ways, you can't really evaluate against what the team needs when the team doesn't exist, and like when marketing is not even a function of the company, you have to think about the shape of that role very differently. Now, again, executive hiring is probably a different animal, and has sort of a set of, characteristics all its own. But I think all of the stuff I think that Kate is describing is exactly right. I think it's just some of the lens that we look through probably has a slightly different color to it, if you will, like a slightly different shape. But I think for the most part, the best practices are the best practices.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't emphasize enough transparency and letting people, to whatever degree they can, tell you whether or not they are the right person for this role,
Mm-hmm.
by kind of telling them what it's really going to be like.
Mm-hmm.
There's no good point to, selling somebody on a role, eventually they show up on Monday, and if it doesn't look the way you said it looks, they're going to opt out, and that's not a good look for anybody.
Agreed. I think it's that balance of finding, and sharing the vision and where you see this going, ultimately, but then the reality of really sharing where you are today to ensure that there is that kind of grit and that gut check of, I'm not going to have all the tools I might have today, but I understand that going in, because the most successful hires, you're hiring for retention. You're not just hiring to solve for that problem today. That's a really good point. Shifting gears a little bit, I'd love to jump into the difficult question around gathering internal alignment. And I know as an organization, this is one of the bigger challenges that we see at Candidate Labs with hiring with early stage companies, is because there is that, we have to hire this person now. And is it demand gen or is it product marketing? Do we need a head of CS? Once that decision is made and there's alignment around that, pulling everybody in and getting everybody on that same page can be incredibly difficult and can really elongate how long it takes to get this person, and then really figuring out, is this the right person in general? So I'm curious, Eleanor, from your perspective, why is it so important that internal alignment exists? And then what are some of the benefits around that? And then lastly, and I know I'm question piling, but what is practically the best way to do that in an organization?
I mean, I think at the fundamental level, everything, this may be a little dramatic, but everything in life is about setting the right expectations and managing those expectations. And certainly for me, at least, everything in hiring, and expectation management isn't just with the candidate, it's with your peers, it's with the cross-functional teams you work with. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of it is identifying upfront who is going to be impacted by this hire. Mm-hmm. Put yourself in their shoes. What do they care about? What does this role mean to them? Because ultimately it's about also setting that person up to be successful. And to set up your new hire to be successful, right, you have to also ensure that everyone they're going to be working with is ready for that too.
Yes.
And so I think it's getting everyone on the same page and understanding the why. So to me, the internal alignment is why this hire. In sales, it's why buy anything, why buy now. I think the same thing is true with hiring. Why hire anyone, why hire now? And if everyone who's going to work with that person, everyone who's going to interview that person has a shared understanding of that, then you have a panel that's going to be on the same page and it's going to be more tightly calibrated at the beginning. And the debriefs are going to be cleaner as a result of that. They're going to ask the questions and know what they're going to get in the interview, but they're going to share the same foundation and context you have on why this hire is critical. So I think you're going to get a tighter process. You're going to get a more effective process. You're going to set that candidate up to be successful, when ultimately, obviously, that's ultimately what matters, is that you're hiring the right person and that you're giving them the tools to be successful. And that all starts at the beginning with internal alignment.
Completely agree. Completely agree. And I like your point around actually setting them up for success. If an internal hiring committee isn't able to get consistent with what they're looking for and why that's important, how in the world is that candidate going to get a sense of how I'm going to be successful? That's a really, really good point. I'm curious, Kate, because we've also done some work with Notion, and it is very much, everybody needs to be tightly aligned around what the need is, who this is, timelines around this. I'm curious to get how you as a larger organization orchestrate all of this successfully.
Yeah, I would say just having the kind of zoom out of getting hiring managers aligned with how Notion hires, what our philosophy is. We have all our hiring managers actually go through training, make sure that they understand at a core foundation, what are we going to be looking for at Notion. Mm-hmm. Once we actually get into bringing candidates on site and actually starting to move through our process, we keep everything very tightly aligned. We do use Notion for this in terms of having our kickoff docs, our questions that we're looking for, and we keep everything very transparent for the panel so everyone is on the same page. Mm-hmm. That's really important, is that you have a very like clean and simple way that's not overcomplicated to understand what you're looking for in the interview process, debrief on that together as a group, and then move into references and kind of next steps from there. But that calibration and coming back together in the debrief is kind of where we have that conversation and really hash it out.
That's great. I think consistency is incredibly important there. And there's so many companies that, again, the rush to hire really gets in the way of the proper enablement for everybody that is going to be on that hiring committee, which just sets you up for failure. You will have times where there are people that are interviewing that maybe haven't interviewed for that role in particular. So arming them with the questions that are linked back to the business objectives of how this role will interact and how to measure good versus great, I think are really important. And I think sometimes companies, they don't want to slow down enough in order to do that, but slowing down on the front end really, it creates a better long-term solution for everybody involved. So great feedback. So I want to jump into also, because again, we have, Eric with the Series A, and then we've got some Series C here. I want to talk about how to best determine the right candidate for the right stage of your company. One of the things that I know resonates with a lot of our clients is really that inherent understanding of the difference of talent that's going to work in a seed versus an A, B, or C type of company. Eric, how have you been able to navigate this with your companies?
I mean, it is definitely complicated, and I've certainly been a part of larger organizations that are 6, 7, 8,000, 9,000 people, publicly traded, and hired at different levels there versus a team of 5 or 10, or Decodable is currently about 21, 22, and just hired our first non-founder exec, and I think like anything else, which skills and, whether they're hard skills or sort of behavioral skills or soft skills, whatever you want to call them, attributes are sort of mandatory, can't live without in order for this person to be successful at this organization at this stage, versus someone who would otherwise be amazing at a later stage organization, but it's just not going to be either happy or excited or interested in the shenanigans that go on when it's like a 20, 25 person company, which is, it's a different animal in a lot of ways. And so like one of the questions I had, with a candidate, for instance, is like, one of the big differences between like a Series A and a Series B for like a sales leader is, are you primarily interested about building a company, or are you primarily interested in building a function? And like, and like, I don't know that that's the best articulation of it, but I think that, at our stage, coming in at a Series A as a sales leader, you are figuring out how we sell. Right. Once you get to Series B or Series C, you're figuring out how to grow and scale a repeatable process and build out the sort of operational infrastructure to get that function to scale. And so for early stage companies, for us, the non-negotiable top thing is how well you can operate with ambiguity, because like that's the thing that I can't control at this stage. I can't control the ambiguity. I can't control the rate at which things change. I mean, certainly you try, but ultimately like that is just a hard problem. So for me, that is always like the number one thing. And you can express this as like grit or self-directedness or sort of like all of these different sort of words that people use to characterize that. But fundamentally, this is not a situation where you want a candidate giving you a hypothetical about how they would handle something. This is a case where like I need to hear, tell me about a time when somebody gave you like a super ambiguous thing that needed to get done and like how you did it. Because especially for me, my background being product and engineering, when I'm hiring marketing or salespeople, I'm not providing them direction. I'm an input to them. And so what I need from them is to say, tell me what you need and I will help you get it. But fundamentally, don't look to me. If they're looking to me for like how to build a marketing function, I'm not your guy. Like that's just not me. And so I think that like, that's what I mean by about the shape of the team around that individual. Anyway, I'll sort of stop there, but like, I think that fundamentally you're just looking for, it's a different job. You're
Yes.
not building a team to 50 people, you're building a team to 3, and you're building the revenue to 5 million or 10 million or whatever the case may be.
That's such a good point. And it's difficult because the resumes and the conversations are seductive. You know, you see the shiny companies and you see the high growth stories, and, you know, interviewing is performance art, right? So you get people, and salespeople, especially go to market across the board, they know how to sell a point. So it's difficult to separate that and really understand what the real core traits are for somebody to be successful in that early stage company. And sometimes those resumes are a little messy. Sometimes they aren't as neat as the rest of them because it's that inherent risk taker that's willing to jump in and take that risk. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't for a myriad of different reasons. But yeah, great points. Just, I want to actually follow this up with you, Eleanor, because you've been part of some, you know, extreme growth stories. How important is it, as you have scaled some of these companies, how much are you indexing on the stage and the differences of the candidates for the stages of organization?
I think it makes a really big difference. I genuinely do, for IC, for manager, for leadership hires. I think you always, to Eric's point, I always think about it as, what do I build versus what do I buy, and what do I want to buy from a candidate? And I think that looks different at different stages. But I can teach sales process, I could teach discovery, I can teach people management. You can't teach a company first mindset. You can't teach comfort with ambiguity. You can't teach that ability to pull in the inputs you need and make a decision when you need to and wait when you don't. Like, those are the things. Like, so I think at different stage, what you want to buy looks very different. And so to me, that's the question at every stage when you're hiring is, for this role right now, what do I want to buy versus what do I want to build? I think earlier, I like to index more on high upside individuals, which is what we called it a lot at SidePick, the folks who might not have the shiny resume, but have the grit, have the curiosity, have the IQ, have the EQ, and will run through walls to get something done. And those are the people who grow in, like, you sort of create your best A players at an early stage company. And so, but when you get a little bit later, you want to optimize a little bit more for experience and the pattern recognition and the ability to maybe start to see around some of the corners, where it's more about, you have to connect the dots based on your prior experiences versus take the chaos and put some structure around it. So I think what you want to buy looks different at different stages in a company's growth.
Yeah, great point. So we'll take some Q&A from the audience now. We have a question from Lena. A few questions from Lena. I like your questions, Lena. First of all, what changes have you made at your respective organizations, if any, to attract top talent during the shifting market and to compete with other top companies? And I want to throw that out to you, Kate.
Good question. I would say we have had to be principled in what our mission is and what our values are, because I think the best candidates and top talent want to go work somewhere that they're passionate about, that they feel called to, especially at our stage. So we've spent a lot of time like articulating and adding a lot of like the heartbeat of Notion into the interview process. That was always there from day one, but I think just like really differentiating that and like articulating that in a more meaningful way has been really helpful. And just writing about that. I think that's been pretty big. Notion has stayed like a competitive place to work, but I think top talent, and even in a downturn, is always going to be, someone that people want to compete for. And so I don't even know if necessarily like the market has necessarily changed our opinion on that. We always want to be as attractive as possible with like benefits and things like that, but people want to join somewhere they feel tied to. And so we want to make that really stand out.
Great points. I throw the same question out to you, Eleanor. Just what changes have you potentially made at ReTool, if any, to attract top talent in this shifting market?
Yeah, I think one point Kate made that I really agree with is top talent is top talent is top talent no matter what the market is. Right. And maybe it was a little higher when we were in that outrageous bull run, but top people are always going to have options. So we haven't actually made a ton of changes except investing more in having sort of sourcers, recruiting coordinators, and recruiters, and again, just starting to specialize a little bit more so that we can think about the candidate experience as a much broader life cycle from when they have awareness of what ReTool is to they're actually in process and talking with folks. So I would say it's more just putting a little more structure and intention behind the roles and the candidate experience. That could also just be a product of our company maturity and maturing as a business. So I think you have to hold yourself to the same bar no matter what the economy is and what the market is. And if you know what great looks like for your company and what great looks like for your interview experience, it's just a matter of scaling it up or scaling it down depending on the hiring needs.
Yep. I'm curious, over the last couple of quarters, are there any specific challenges that you're seeing in the hiring process or around, securing candidates, getting candidates to move through the process to a yes, that you're seeing and feeling right now over maybe what you were seeing 6 or 7 months ago? And Eric, I'll throw that out to you.
I'll be honest with you, I'm old enough now where this is my third recession, and I'm going to call it that. I'm not an economist, but like recessions for startups like ours, like Series Seed or A, those kinds of things, it's like Christmas morning, because like one of two things happens. Either people hunker down and they decide that nothing on earth is going to pop me out of the role that I'm in until the market changes. And like those people, like you can work on them, but like that is something that's very personal to them. And like I believe that like when you switch jobs and stuff like that, I almost encourage candidates to do what's right for them. And if it's join us, I'm very excited about that. If it's to stay where they are, that's okay too. But honestly, right now, like people's RSUs have been cut in half or into like a third or something like that. And so like, honestly, it's like raining top talent. There are fantastic companies who are being forced to do layoffs because they weren't as disciplined about cash and like those kinds of things. And so like these great people are shaking loose. And I'll be honest with you. I mean, like it's never been easier, So I think that, if you're staring at this and your FMV, your strike price on your options or something like that is a 2021 price, and like your current company valuation is a 2022 valuation, like that employee can no longer stay in that deeply overvalued company. And so the fact that we have been sort of financially thoughtful, about who we hire and when and how we've constructed things like fundraising rounds and stuff like that has paid off in spades. And I think that it's actually just been super, super great. We have the problem now of seeing tons of amazing candidates and having to be disciplined to say, we actually can't grow the team that much, right? Like I'm staring down the barrel of an amazing list of candidates and just kind of going like, I want to hire all of you and I can't. And so that's the only problem we have is like one of discipline and one of like shiny, I don't want to say shiny object, but like fantastic candidate that you just want to hire and you can't right now, or you're not quite ready to for a variety of reasons. And so I think if anything, it allows us to be even choosier, even pickier about sort of like finding exactly the right kind of person that makes sense for us right now.
Right. That's great insight. So we have a question from Mario, which I'll pose to all three of you. And that is, how is everyone thinking about team culture in this distributed work world? And Kate, I'll open that up to you.
Yeah, so Notion has about 5 offices globally now. We have people quite distributed, but we are an in-office company. So we still have folks coming to the office 2 days a week. And so I think finding this blend of like being present together on like impactful days, but also being able to be home and like do kind of deep focus work during the times you need it, has been this blend that we've landed on. And I think despite having the anchor days and work from home capability, we do have a global office no matter what. And so just trying to find ways that we can be conscious of folks in other places, whether that's, our all hands or company meetups. We're doing a company retreat coming up here in October. Just trying to be intentional and inclusive where we can, I think is the biggest thing, and really going out of your way to make people feel special where they're located, whether that's like localized gift packages or things that like resonate with wherever your employees are located, and then creating that time to have that in-person magic. We're still focusing on doing that, right? And I think that that's possible, even if you've chosen the full remote. There's still ways to get people together. And for Notion, it's just anchored in the office.
Mm-hmm. Eleanor, I can't remember. Is ReTool in office as well or fully remote?
Very, very similar to Notion. We are, except we are two days in the office and a swing third.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're all in San Francisco this week for our big return to office, where it felt a lot like the first day of school yesterday, in many ways. I do think finding structuring our anchor in office days around like team meetings. And so you have your team meetings on the days when everyone will be in the office, or weekly happy hours or weekly book clubs or weekly traditions on the days when everyone will be in the office. I think creating the consistency is what's really key. I think consistency is what's been missing over the last few years.
Mm-hmm.
And just knowing that you're going to see people on this day, you're going to be able to work from home and not worry about, is this the day I go in? Is this the day? If I'm at home, will I have a lesser experience in this meeting? So I just think creating an intentional and consistent experience is, I don't know, the biggest gift I can get when I know what to expect on any given day. So that's sort of been the bedrock of how we thought about it.
Yeah. Eric?
I mean, we're fully distributed. We have 0 offices, modulo my house in Soma, in San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
This is, I mean, my last startup was fully distributed, and I don't know if that's just a function of, the kind of business that we are, but, we have a strong sort of open source bent to us. And so like, we have to hire where the open source developers are. And
Yes.
So in a lot of ways, the talent pool is simply not, in a single place. And so when we have, there's only about 80 people on Earth who are sort of open source developers on a particular project, you sort of like need to be able to scoop them up.
Mm-hmm.
That's a little bit product and engineering centric, but I'll level with you. Like, I feel like I've trained for this moment my whole life. This is my second fully distributed company. I'm an introvert. Like, I'm really good at sort of these kinds of things. I do think consistency is important, but I'll be honest with you. I have a strong belief that like culture isn't about ping pong tables and happy hours. I think culture is about what the norms are about how things get done, and what happens when the quote unquote boss is not in the room. Do people stop at red lights? Do they not stop at red lights? And like, what do they consider to be, the acceptable way to treat and to work with their peers? And I think that's just like a thing that you always have to be developing. It is certainly harder remote, for sure. You have to be much more intentional about it. There's less opportunities for what I would consider to be free interaction. You don't bump into somebody in the kitchen, right? You don't have that. And so it is harder. It is easier to like dehumanize someone else over the internet, right? Like, and I think that happens quite a bit. So you do need to build those kinds of relationships. We do that by getting people together at some regular cadence, typically, 3 times a year, 4 times a year. And then we will basically do pop-up offices. When a project kicks off, you get 5 people, you fly them to one place, and you like basically give them like summer camp for a week or 2, a chance to work together on those kinds of projects. And then I think that creates this ability to bring people together. I'll be honest with you, even at a place like Splunk, where we had offices, people from the 5th floor would Zoom into a meeting with the people on the 4th floor. And so like, I'll be honest with you, like, I don't know how much I buy the in office thing, because like, if you have a couple of offices and your sales team is distributed in the field anyway, and maybe again, this is like an enterprise software company thing, but like, you're fundamentally not, you're fundamentally a distributed company, whether you like it or not. So I don't know. I feel like I've trained for this moment my whole life.
I love it. I love it. All right. Well, so let's close out with some advice. And this is something that I hear a lot from candidates in the market. especially with all of the remote hiring that's going on right now. One of the things that I think candidates are indexing highly on is culture. And measuring culture in an interview process is almost impossible. So I think candidates actually use the interview process as a way to really get a barometer around a company's culture, which is why responsiveness, and I think somebody said earlier, I think it was you, Eleanor, setting up expectations and then following through those expectations and commitments are incredibly important. So I would love to hear from all three of you around any advice that you might have for creating a great candidate experience, an experience better than me going to plug my laptop in right now because it's about to die. But just any advice on creating a great candidate experience. Kate, can we start with you?
Yeah, sure. I said at the front, I would just say it again, like for the candidate to have a great experience, everyone on the panel needs to be knowing what they're looking for in like a positive place. So like that alignment directly translates to the candidate experience. And then like, I think culture fit's kind of like a dicey term there because it can really go in lots of different ways. And so what we try to say is like alignment to values. And so we try to like really tell the candidates like, these are our company values and this is what we care about. And I think candidates really like latch on to that because it's like an actual way you can understand like what is the culture about? Well, it harkens back down to these values that set us at this foundation. And so we try to just be really like honest and transparent and open about what those values are. And so I think that like transparency toward that foundation again is really, really critical there. And then the last piece I would say is just really trying to make sure your recruiters and your team is just showing that warmth and excitement for the company. So we make sure that we do things like create docs for folks about quotes that people had through the process that call to how amazing they are. And we share that with candidates to show them like we're genuinely excited here. And we try to, show off our product in the meantime through that. But that warmth is a critical piece to get across.
It's hugely important. Something that we found really to be successful for a number of our clients is just exactly that, stakeholder engagement. So as somebody is moving through the process and as you get to the end, you've interviewed with a lot of people, you've had a lot of conversations. We always strongly suggest follow up on that, stakeholder, especially if there's an offer getting extended or an offer that's been accepted. Everybody that's been part of that, show your enthusiasm and excitement for that individual and why. It's not a cut and paste. It's more so based on, these meetings that we've had, I think you'd be a great fit here. We're excited to do this and here's why. We've had great feedback from candidates where they come back to us and say, I can't believe that the board member sent me an email. I didn't expect that. Or, they're interviewing for an AE role and the VP of marketing took the time to reach out. So I think those little things make a big, big difference. Eleanor, what about you? Any advice on creating a great candidate experience?
I think there are three things that come to mind. On the sales team, our recruiters are really embedded. They come to sales all hands. We were just doing a planning offsite. Recruiting team was there, the sales recruiting team. It's making the recruiter for your function part of the team because the more they understand the culture of the team, the more authentically they can speak to it. The more they understand the challenges and the opportunities, the more authentically they can speak to it. And I do think that authenticity can really come through in an interview process where you're not just hearing the same things about, blow out your number, do all of these things. It's actually, hey, I'm really embedded in this team. I understand what they're all about and I can communicate that really effectively. A small tactical thing, being on a texting relationship with a candidate, I think is a really nice way to just build a quick and simple bond and to be able to follow up after interviews and to make it a little more personalized. And then to Kate's point about the warmth, I found out we had a candidate who was interviewing on his birthday and our recruiter sent him cupcakes and I think signed them for me. And I was like, you're welcome for these cupcakes I've never heard of. But what an incredible touch that is. So just sweating the details and bringing that back to your point of bringing it back to a conversation you had, understanding where they're coming from, understanding the context. But those little touches, like cupcakes on their birthday, I think can really make a difference.
I agree. Especially cupcakes. You cannot go wrong with cupcakes. I don't care who you are.
Very hard to miss. Hot dogs, on the other hand, more controversial.
You mean hot dog sandwiches. Okay. And then, Eric, I'm curious again, smaller company, more intimate, less people involved in the interview process. What do you do to create a great candidate experience?
Yeah, I mean, the thing I tell the team is that no matter what you assume about a candidate or whatever you believe about a candidate, I want everyone who interviews to want to work here. In fact, I want everyone to want to work here. So like dance rules apply. You want everyone to dance with you, and then you get to decide who you dance with. So I think setting that expectation that no matter what an interviewer might think in any one moment, bringing them back to the idea that like there's things about this candidate that are valuable, and our default should be to treat them as if they are going to be a coworker, and to treat them like an employee. I you know, my sense is, you know, in addition, and I agree with both Kate and Eleanor, but like around Kate's, you know, description about values, I agree completely. I think we even look for places to demonstrate those values rather than just explain them. And so like one, for instance, I was talking about values with a candidate, and she said, well, you know, like, do you have a salary range, you know, for the role? And I said, not only do I have it, let me show you how we think about comp. And I brought up like the salary ranges for all roles, and I just showed her. And I just kind of went like, listen, like, you will always know where you stand. And so like, I think you're leveled here. This is how we're thinking about you. And like, these are the ranges that like, you might not be senior enough for, you know? And like, and she's like, no one's ever done this with me. And I brought up the cap table in Carta, you know, not individual employee information, but like share classes. And I just kind of went like, this is the cap table. These are our investors. This is the percentage of the employee pool that's remaining. I walked, and we have this opportunity, right? Because we're 20, 25 people, but, and she was just like, I've just never had anybody show anything like this to me. When can I start? And like, you know, it's just an experience that you can give somebody that no one else can. And showing and demonstrating those values of openness, you know, openness and honesty and sort of transparency, or, you know, whatever it might be for your company, that's just like an unfair advantage you have over every other employee or employer that person's going to interview with. And you have the opportunity to you know, people will self-select into that, you know, because they agree with your values, right? Like Kate said. So, you know, from my perspective, I think those things are just like totally unfair advantages that we have over other organizations, because we're just willing to live certain things, I think, that other people might not be.
Yeah, I love that. Time flew. Well, we are at time. I really want to send a big thank you to everybody that took time out of their day to attend. Hopefully you learned something from these masters of their craft. Thank you, Eleanor. Thank you, Kate. Thank you so much, Eric. This has been a great conversation overall, and we appreciate you. So everybody have a great day. Thanks so much. Oh, wait. Oh my God.
Thank you, everyone. We are going to wrap things up here. But first, for everyone who attended this webinar, thank you so much. I want to say thank you to Candidate Labs for this amazing content and for pulling up those amazing speakers. Kate, Eleanor, Kendra, and Eric, you are fantastic. While the panelists and I hang out backstage, the MSP team will make sure that the recording is available on the MSP website, and you will also receive a follow-up email with the link. So everything is handy, and you have everything that you need when you most need it. So panelists, we can leave the stage. I want to say thank you again for you. This was amazing. I learned a lot. So let's go hang out backstage. Bye.